I mean, we have an executive, and we have a judicial, and then a legislative, and then smoke bomb!
Because the justice system that convicted his only surviving son is the same justice system he's vowed to protect. And if that doesn't tell you who Joe Biden is, I don't really know what does.
I think I know what does.
Comedian and Daily Show host Jon Stewart just absolutely roasted Joe Biden and MSNBC over their laughable and hypocritical handling of the Hunter Biden scandal. His spot-on critique had Democrats scrambling, tripping over their own words in a full-on meltdown, and spoiler alert, it was a total catastrophe. Believe me, it was pure gold. And yes, I've got the receipts. But before we dive into the chaos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more no-holds-barred truth bombs just like this. Finally, Democrats have a moral high ground from which they can judge. No shame, no hypocrisy, and no nuance. Joe Biden and the Democrats love to claim they're the champions of the rule of law, always ready to strike that moral pose. It's their signature move, branding themselves as the party of integrity, accountability, and justice. But when president, Biden issued a pardon for his own son, Hunter Biden. Right in the middle of a swirl of scandals and ongoing investigations, it sent shockwaves through the political world. President Biden has granted a pardon to his son, Hunter Biden. We were so close. Even hardcore liberals like Jon Stewart were left speechless. Stewart, who is known for relentlessly calling out right-wing hypocrisy, was shocked by what he was seeing. The very party he had supported for years had completely abandoned its core values in the most self-serving and shameless way. For him, this wasn't just politics. It felt personal. This wasn't only about Hunter's mistakes. It was about a party's moral collapse, a party that once claimed to stand for ethics. Watching that unravel in real time, while friendly media outlets turned a blind eye, was the breaking point. It exposed just how far the Democrats had drifted from the principles they once championed. Stewart, like so many others, saw the supposed party of honesty and openness turn into the very same corruption it used to fight against. The more they dodged and deflected, the worse the trust gap grew. It wasn't just frustrating, it was a gut punch to many Americans. It sparked a political awakening. Sure, Republicans were going to criticize, but Biden made this particular line of attack almost too easy, especially after he spent so long saying he wouldn't intervene because of how much he respects the system. Lying and twisting the truth seems second nature to them. They walk around like moral crusaders, pretending to uphold justice and ethics. But once the cameras are off, the mask slips. Biden stood before the American people, looked them straight in the eye, and promised he wouldn't pardon his son, no matter what the jury decided. I'm not going to do anything. I will respect the jury's decision. And yet, here we are. Biden did exactly what he said he wouldn't do. He promised to honor the jury's decision and keep politics out of the courtroom. But the moment the IE verdict wasn't in his favor, the spin machine roared to life. Suddenly, the story shifted from "no one is above the law" to subtle hints that the process was flawed or too harsh. His so-called respect for the justice system vanished the instant. It involved his own family. This double standard erodes public trust and reeks of the elitism that Americans are fed up with. One rule for the people, another for the powerful. Here's the thing. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're being questioned about pardoning your son, don't do it at the swim-up bar of a resort. Now, I'm not making accusations, but you have to wonder, did Biden try to nudge the jury behind the scenes, hoping for a convenient verdict? And when that didn't happen, bam! He pulled the presidential lever to clean up the mess. And guess who's been the biggest cheerleader in this entire circus? The so-called legacy media. But don't worry, we'll get to their role later. Watch now as Biden's move turned into a burden for his appointees, forcing them to scramble and defend the indefensible. Their credibility took a nosedive. Cabinet, members, press secretaries, and spokespeople suddenly found themselves dodging questions, issuing vague statements, and tying themselves in knots on live TV. It was political theater at its most cringeworthy. Do you think President Biden should pardon Hunter Biden? Well, there are lots of claims of political prosecution and political... Is Hunter politically? Instead of real leadership, we got pure damage control. And instead of transparency, we got a flood of spin, deflection, and radio silence. The administration closed ranks, hoping the storm would blow over, but Americans were watching. Every tense press briefing, every question dodged, only fueled the growing suspicion that something bigger and more troubling was being buried. Honestly, it was almost comical watching the Democrats scramble to justify Biden's decision. Once the cameras rolled and tough questions started pouring in, it became one of those unforgettable moments in American politics. An avalanche of buzzwords, word salads, and verbal gymnastics. Officials rattled off polished phrases and jargon. That sounded important, but ultimately meant nothing. It was spin at its peak, or more accurately, at its most desperate. But hey, that's page 1 of the Democratic playbook. Defend the party at all costs, even when the actions are completely indefensible. Principles tossed aside. Accountability? Never heard of it. The moral high ground they've been preaching about. Turns out it's just a muddy slope when their own are in trouble. But the flip-flopping wasn't just confined to Democrats. It extended to members of the so-called objective media. The justice system that convicted his only surviving son is the same system he vowed to protect. And if that doesn't tell you who Joe Biden really is, I'm not sure what does. I think I've got a clear picture. Yep, that's your so-called unbiased, straight-down-the-middle journalism. The same media that claims to speak truth to power instantly became Biden's PR team the moment things went south. Instead of holding him accountable for blatantly contradicting his own promises, they twisted themselves in knots trying to justify it. But here's the part that really lingers. Why does it feel like Democrats were counting on a favorable jury verdict? Their early confidence was almost smug, repeating again and again that they'd respect the decision, no matter what the outcome. And yet, the moment the ruling didn't go their way, the script flipped like clockwork. Damage control mode kicked in. Watching them pivot that quickly, like they hadn't just promised the exact opposite, was jaw-dropping. It's like they honestly thought the system would play along, and when it didn't, they panicked and grabbed for executive power. So much for conviction, so much for accountability, and Jon Stewart didn't let them off the hook. Now, look at the dance Democrats are doing. Be honest. The only reason they went after Hunter the way they did, many federal prosecutors have confirmed this, is because he's the president's son. People have to remember, the president has already lost 2 children. He doesn't need to lose another one. First, the mainstream media, especially outlets like MSNBC, rushed to shield Biden's decision by framing it as an act of fatherly love. They heavily leaned into the emotional angle, reminding everyone that Hunter is Biden's only surviving son after the tragic loss of 2 children. It was classic emotional manipulation meant to sway sympathy and blur judgment. But when the American people didn't fall for it, the narrative shifted. They started saying, well, Trump did it too, pointing to Trump's pardon of his daughter's father-in-law, as if that somehow made Biden's decision acceptable. Honestly, it was both ridiculous and sad watching the media bend over backwards to defend Biden's latest blunder. Instead of demanding accountability, they scrambled to recycle weak comparisons and emotional distractions. This wasn't journalism. It was pure damage control disguised as reporting. The harder they spun, the clearer their bias became. They weren't informing the public. They were running interference for a stumbling administration, hoping we'd look the other way. But we didn't. We saw right through it. The Trump comparisons fell flat because 2 wrongs don't make a right. Accountability isn't a one-sided issue. It's something everyone should be held to. The media's failure only deepened the trust gap. Yes, 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 to everything you were saying. If you hadn't made Hunter Biden not receiving a pardon the moral benchmark, we wouldn't be here. This is what you get after years of parading around as the self-declared champions of the rule of law, using it like a moral cudgel against political opponents. You can't play both sides. Even before the jury had spoken, Democrats were out there declaring they would honor the verdict. They were the responsible ones, the party of principles, the grown-up contrast to those reckless Republicans. It was virtue signaling at its finest, a performance meant to show off their supposed moral high ground. But now, here we are. The second the verdict didn't fit their narrative, they flipped the script. Suddenly, it wasn't about justice anymore. It was about protecting their own. They became exactly what they had spent years condemning. The hypocrisy is jaw-dropping. The double standards couldn't be clearer, and worst of all, they thought we wouldn't catch on. So, Hunter, I'll give you a pardon. Well, maybe a few years, 5 years, 10 years, maybe 11. And if you would be so kind, make sure this New Year's Eve is also covered. For Hunter Biden to get a pardon for crimes he's committed or might have committed over the past 11 years raises serious concerns. It suggests the offenses are far more severe and politically explosive than we've been led to believe. Because this isn't just about one man's legal troubles. It's about how far an administration is willing to go to shield itself from scrutiny. Let's not kid ourselves. The Biden administration, with the help of its loyal media allies, has a well-documented history of sweeping scandals under the rug and avoiding responsibility, whether it's cherry-picked reporting, controlling the narrative, or ignoring inconvenient truths. They've become experts at the cover-up. I didn't know pardons could cover crimes you might have committed. I'm honestly surprised Biden didn't include the phrase on Earth 1 or any other Earths in the multiverse. So, if they're this quick to shut the door on Hunter's legal baggage, you have to wonder, what exactly are they so desperate? To hide? What skeletons are still lurking in that closet? And more importantly, what kind of precedent does this set for future presidents and their families when it comes to evading justice and avoiding accountability? If this becomes the new norm, where political privilege protects the powerful from consequences, we're not just witnessing corruption, we're paving the way for it. Future leaders will know they can get away with anything as long as the media covers for them and the public looks the other way. That's not just a problem, it's a threat to democracy. Now, some might say that's what any loving father would do for their troubled child, but on Fox News, they argued that it was this very love that might have caused the problem in the first place. It's true. Hunter Biden should have faced some tough love, he broke the law, and he should be held accountable, just like any other American. Justice means nothing if it's applied selectively. Letting him face the legal consequences would have shown integrity, a rare moment in Washington. It would have sent a powerful message. Not even the president's son is above the law. That's what true leadership looks like. Instead, we got political favoritism dressed in emotional storytelling. Biden had a chance to show that accountability starts at home, even when it's hard. But he took the easy way out. Pardon over principle, optics over honesty. And with that, any illusion of moral high ground shattered. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal of the values his administration claims to uphold. It set a dangerous example that power protects its own. It left millions wondering if justice is just. A catchphrase. And worst of all, it confirmed what many already feared. The system still plays favorites. But why this weekend? Normally, you drop a controversial pardon in a flurry of other distractions. In the end, Biden's pardon wasn't just a political misstep, it was a full-on betrayal of the values he preaches. It exposed double standards, emotional manipulation, and the media's role in shielding the powerful from real accountability. What could have been a rare moment of integrity turned into yet another reminder that the political elite live by their own rules. Justice was once again handed out selectively, and as the smoke clears, one thing is clear. This wasn't about fatherly love, it was about saving face, and the American people aren't buying it, not this time. And with that, we wrap up today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.